Today we're going to continue with Chapter 1. We're looking at Section 1.3. This section is all about recognizing collinear and non-collinear points, betweenness of points, and starting to correctly interpret our geometric diagrams. All right, so once again, we have some more vocabulary. Collinear. Collinear means that we have three or more points that lie on the same line. So if I was to demonstrate it with a picture, once again, remember collinear is if I have a point, let's call it A, where once again I have to have a capital A. Here I have a second point. I'm going to call that point B. Well, automatically, if I have 2 points, I can very easily connect those 2 points together without any curves, and so that would make it collinear. So because any 2 points will automatically be collinear, that's why my definition says I need to have 3 or more points. So notice that here I have a third point. I'm going to call it C. So if I wanted to, I could connect them nice with one line, and notice that that one line that I drew, it goes through all 3 of those points, and that's why those points are collinear. Okay, so you don't actually have to have that line drawn through them, but if I was to connect that line through them, yes, all of those points need to fall on that same line. So then to be non-collinear means that points that don't fall on the same line. So a diagram of this would be something like, here's point D, here's point E, and so automatically those 2 points will have collinearity to them because they can have one line drawn to them. But if I have another point F over here, there's no way that I can connect all 3 of those points using this same exact line. So they would be non-collinear. So then betweenness of points means that all points must be collinear to state that a point is between 2 others. Okay, so if I have point G, H, and I, if I was to draw a line, all of those points would fall in that one line. So notice that in this case, because I have collinear points, I can say that H is between G and I. Okay, had that H been moved up a little bit, well, then I wouldn't be able to say that H is between G and I. They have to be collinear in order for us to say anything about betweenness of points. Okay, so knowing those 3 things is going to help us figure out what we can and cannot assume from diagrams. So this is very, very important, and we're going to be doing a lot of problems where we look at a diagram and we think, okay, yes, I can assume this, or no, I cannot. So let's start with the list of what we can assume. We can assume straight lines and straight angles. Okay, so if something appears to be a straight line, that's something that we can assume. Same thing with an angle. If it looks like it's a straight angle, we can assume it. We can assume collinearity of points. Once again, as long as you have 3 points that then fall within that same line, we know that we have collinear. So then it's the same aspect of then we can also assume that points are not collinear. If I look at a diagram, I can say, okay, I'm not going to be able to draw one line through all 3 of those points. Those points are non-collinear. Betweenness of points, because remember, betweenness of points connects to that concept of collinearity. If I can assume collinearity, I can assume, yes, this point is in between 2 others because they are collinear. And the relative position of points. So meaning that if I have a whole bunch of points on my diagram, I can say, okay, this point is to the left of this one, or this point is above this one. So the direction at which the points lie is something that I can assume. So now moving on to the most important list of what we cannot assume. We cannot assume right angles. So unless I'm specifically told in the diagram that this is a right angle, or if I have that little symbol with a box, if I don't have that box symbol indicating a right angle, I cannot assume that that angle is a right angle. I cannot assume congruent segments. So unless I'm specifically told this is a length of 5 inches, this is the length of 5 inches, or that they have the same marking, so they have the same tick mark in between, I cannot assume that segments are congruent. Even though they might appear to look the same length, I cannot assume it unless it's marked or indicated as such. Same thing with congruent angles. So along the lines of having right angles, I can't assume, yeah, that angle and this angle, they are both, 50 degrees. Unless I'm told that, I cannot assume that. So unless I have markings inside the angles that are the same, or am I specifically told, yes, this angle is congruent to this, I cannot assume it. And then just the relative size and of these segments and angles in general. So I can't say, yep, that segment's longer than this one unless I clearly know, okay, this is marked as 3 inches and this one's marked as 1 inch. Okay, same thing with angles. I cannot assume, yep, that's an obtuse angle and this is an acute angle. Unless I'm specifically told that, I cannot assume it. All right, so getting into some practice problems. Focusing on collinearity, we are going to be sketching pictures based off of information that is given to us. So it says we want to draw 3 points A, B, and C that are not collinear. Okay, so once again, collinear means that they all fall on the same line. So if these are not collinear, I'm going to put point A randomly here, point B randomly there, but then I'm going to have to put C somewhere else where I'm not going to be able to connect them all with one line. So I drew 3 points that are not collinear. So it says now use a straight edge. So if you have something that like a ruler that would make it nice and straight, go ahead and get that out. But it says now going back to what we did in the very first section with rays, segments, and lines, we're going to draw the ray AB. So remember, A starts us off. That means that's the end point. So there's no arrow there. It has to go to B and past B. So A to B, going past B with an arrow, there's my ray AB. Line segment, so the word segment follows line. So I can ignore that word line. Segments don't have any angles, or sorry, they don't have any arrows. So if I go to BC, I know that I have to connect those points, but I don't want any arrows with them. And then finally the line CA. So I want to connect C and A, but I want to extend past those and put arrows on either side because lines extend infinitely in both directions. And there's my diagram that matches all of those characteristics. So now the next one is a little bit more because there's 5 points. There's the points A, B, C, D, and E. So here are our restrictions. We want to make the points A, B, and C collinear. Okay, so however I decide to do that, I need to make them all fall on the same line. So A, B, and if I was to draw a nice straight line, notice that those would all fall on the same line. So now that I have that, I want the points A, D, and E to not be collinear. Well, I already have point A drawn, so I can't draw another A. E and D are not drawn. So those are the 2 other points that I have to draw to get the 5 points in this picture. But to make them not collinear, if I put point D up here, right now, A and D are on the same line. So I got to put point E somewhere that will not then form a line with A and D. So I'm going to randomly put that below point B. Notice A, D, and E. There's no way I can connect those 3 and form a nice straight line, so that makes them not collinear or non-collinear. So this diagram right here matches the situation that is being asked. Betweenness, once again, when we are looking at the diagrams, I want to determine if the point X is between the points A and B. So notice that in the very first diagram on the far left, all 3 points fall on the same line. They're all connected with one nice straight figure. And so that is the very definition of betweenness of point. X is between A and B because they're all collinear. So yes, X is between points A and B in that diagram. But in the middle diagram, notice that X is a little bit farther to the right than A and B if I was to connect them with one straight line. So since I cannot connect A, X, and B with one straight line, then no, in this diagram, X is not between the points A and B. If I look at the last diagram, notice that there is nothing connecting them together. However, if I was to draw a line going through them, obviously you can make it a little bit better. But notice that it is going to go through all of those points. And so, yes, once again, X is between the points A and B. All right, last problem here. It says, can we assume the following from the diagram? So we have to think about that list of what can and cannot be assumed. So part A, it says angle ABC is a right angle. So if I look at the angle ABC, I'm going to highlight it for a second just to kind of show you. ABC is right here. Notice that nowhere in this diagram do I have any indication that I have a right angle. Remember, that's something that cannot be assumed. Since there is no box in this little corner right here, I cannot assume that. So it says, can we assume? And my answer is no. All right, so there was no box indicating that I had a right angle, and that's something that cannot be assumed. Moving on to part B, points B, E, and C are collinear. So notice that B, E, and C, they all fall on the same line. They're all connected. That is something that can be assumed. Collinearity is on that list of what you can assume. So my answer is yes, I can assume that. It says point B is between A and D. So once again, looking at all of these points, betweenness of points is something that I can assume. Notice that those 3 points are all on the same line. Yes, I can assume that B is between A and D. And then finally, it says the length of the segment AB. So if I was to highlight AB, that's this segment right here. It says that that is going to be about the same length as BE. The segment BE is right here. So those two segments, if I look at them, notice that there is no tick mark indicating that they are congruent. And so I cannot assume lengths of segments unless they are specifically marked or indicated and told that they are congruent. So in this case, no, I cannot assume that the length of AB is about the length of BE. And so that's us recognizing collinearity, betweenness of points, and looking at interpreting a geometric diagram correctly.